Hi there, my name is Autumn, and I'm going to talk a little bit today about the function of misogyny in female prisons using a feminist and person and environment perspectives. I will be providing real-life experiences of current and former incarcerated individuals in Pennsylvania state prisons, and all identifying information has been changed to protect anonymity. So I hope you enjoy the presentation. Since the Reagan administration, we have seen a boom in mass incarceration that has disproportionately impacted female incarceration. Over the last 30 years, we've seen a 700% increase in female incarceration rates. This increase has disproportionately impacted people of color. Most of these women are held in local and county jails, and 60% of those individuals currently sitting behind bars have not been convicted of a crime. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the presentation, I want to talk a little bit about what I mean by misogyny. This goes a lot deeper than your dictionary definition of a general hatred or dislike towards women. Misogyny truly is a functional tool used to enforce the social norms and maintain white Christian male power. Misogyny is typically expressed through punitive, resentful, personal, and social sanctions that are placed on the individual accused of violating these gender normative expectations. So going forward, I really want you to think of misogyny as more than just a general dislike of women, but also as a function used to control women and maintain gender normative social rules. Nothing epitomizes implicit misogyny more than asking a woman to smile for you. Asking a woman to smile is rooted in misogynistic beliefs that women are there to look pretty for men and make men feel more comfortable in their presence. It reinforces gender role expectations that women should always be pleasant and passive towards their male counterparts, and it socializes us to not express our emotions outwardly. It really is a subtle form of control. Now, contrary to popular belief, Pennsylvania state prisons do not provide the basic needs of their inmates. To be considered an indigent inmate, you really have to go through somewhat of a means test similar to that out here on the streets to receive social services. That means that individuals held in female prisons must order commissary in order to meet those basic needs for hygiene, such as toothpaste, toothbrush, soap, and all that good stuff. Jen Sachs is an inmate at one of the female institutions in Pennsylvania, and she shared with me that there is a male guard who refuses to give her her commissary sheet until she, quote, smiles pretty for me like a good girl, quote. Now, this inmate has a history of trauma. She was groomed as a young child, and she was often told to smile pretty for her groomers. And this really triggers these memories for her. However, since this commissary sheet is such a commodity and they only have a limited amount of time to fill it out, she has to comply to his command of smiling for him so that she can receive that commissary sheet. So as I briefly mentioned in the last slide, an inmate with a history of trauma, and as research has shown, that is one of the major pathways to female incarceration is chronic trauma, abuse, and domestic violence. So with that said, the effects of that trauma manifest itself in psychopathology, and it's been found that there are higher prevalence of mental illness in female prisons. And right here you see an intersection of trauma and misogyny, where this misogyny really exacerbates the effects of this trauma. Pennsylvania is known to take a punitive stance towards mental illness. Out of the many stories I heard of how female inmates are punished for having a mental illness, this one really struck me to the core. I'll never forget the night my friend cut herself all up because of how third shift treated her. Her mom passed away after a long battle with cancer, only about a month before she got here. It was really hard on her, and she was really struggling with depression. I remember hearing the guard opening the door that night. I heard him laugh and make careless comments about the memorial tattoo she had for her mother on her arm. I remember listening to her cry and cry through the walls. I tried to talk to her through the vet to calm her down, but the guard threatened to write me up. It was around midnight when the medical personnel finally arrived. She had cut herself up pretty badly, but the third shift guard refused to call for help. He just called her an attention-seeking bitch. I guess she wanted a way out, a way to escape this abuse and this pain. They sent her to the hole for cutting herself, straight to isolation. No one to talk to her, no one to help her. And the guard ordered her cellie to clean up all that blood. This is a very extreme example of how mental illness is punished in Pennsylvania state prisons. And it is my understanding that they have since stopped the practice of throwing an inmate in the hole for cutting themselves, but they instead isolate them in a different area that's just not labeled as the restrictive housing unit. Another way misogyny presents itself in female prisons is in disparities in punishment for minor infractions and male privilege. Shapiro has found that individuals in female prisons are punished more harshly than their male counterparts for minor infractions, such as talking back to an officer. It's well known in Pennsylvania that the male state prisons have a boys will be boys attitude, and they're really only looking for violence and weapons. And even in those cases, a lot of the time, the men are able to avoid getting sanctions. One example of how the men are more privileged in the women are the use of water bottles during recreation time. This is called yard. When the inmates in the female prisons go out into the yard to play sports in very hot weather, the officers will often refuse to turn on the water fountains so that they can get a drink. The women also are not allowed to roll up the sleeves on their dark brown t-shirts to try to escape some of the heat. The men, on the other hand, are provided white tank tops that they are allowed to wear out to the yard, and they're also, according to one inmate at SCI Albion, allowed to take their personal water bottles out to the yard with them for recreational activities. This inmate actually quoted that they would never do that to the men. All we have to do is ask for them to turn the water fountains on, and they will do it. In addition to these gender disparities, misogyny presents itself in a unique use of force against female inmates. Sexual misconduct. Sexual misconduct on behalf of male guards against female inmates has been well documented. However, it still remains underreported due to the widespread fear of retaliation. Many reports have found the Prison Rape Elimination Act to be ineffective in protecting inmates. One inmate shared with me her experience with a male guard who cornered her in her cell during a surprise cell search. He was grabbing at his private parts and making sexual comments to her, calling her really derogatory names. She says she stood there in fear and couldn't say anything back because if she spoke up, she would also get a write-up. And there are other ways that misogyny presents itself, such as menstrual health for women. In female prisons, there's often not adequate feminine hygiene products provided for female inmates, and there have been times where women have been told to sit on their toilets during menstruation. So as you can see, misogyny is a functional tool used to control individuals in female prisons, and it exacerbates the trauma histories that these individuals already struggle with daily. To see any type of change, we really need a paradigm shift in thinking as a society. As I've explained, trauma and abuse are the pathways to female incarceration, making the incarcerated victims as well. Implementing gender-sensitive, trauma-informed care into all prisons is a restorative justice approach that can really, truly make a difference in these women's lives and help them heal so that they can thrive and become functioning members of society. I thank you so much for your time and your patience, and I wish you all a great day.